Welcome to Why Wait Till Sunday. I am your host, Alfred, and I have a very special guest tonight, Chris Moxley. That would be on Twitter, Chris Moxley 19, a self-professed troll in the devy and C2C sphere. No, I'm just kidding. He's actually a really great guy, and someone who you just kind of find people on Twitter sometimes, and you end up then interacting more often than not, and you kind of strike up a little, back and forth type relationship. And so Chris is one of those guys over the last year, and always enjoy interacting with him. Smart guy, and if he comes in with a hot take, he always can back it up with some stats or some rationale. So you really have to appreciate that too. Welcome to the show, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's been a long time since we were talking about college DFS and agonizing over injuries, but
yeah, don't you love that? Yeah, don't you love that on Saturday you have to set your watch for 11:50 just to get that last 10 minutes to make sure nothing wrecks your entire lineup?
Oh, it's happened more than once. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I'm super excited to have you on the show because, I guess you wouldn't necessarily consider yourself, an analyst. I don't know if you're with a site or doing anything, but certainly a smart guy, and you always have good opinions, and you've, even taught me some things. So regardless, definitely appreciate having your thoughts. And, the reason I wanted to have you on this show in particular is because recently, I think you commented on Devi Dietz, a post or something, and had an opinion on our incoming freshman. So, guy just finished his high school season. I said, well, and then I DM'd you. I was like, well, have you gone through some of the high school stuff? Because there's a lot of people, even in the Devi and even in the Campus to Canton community, that haven't really looked at high school guys just yet, because we're still getting through the regular NFL season. So when I thought you had already kind of had some opinions, I was like, well, I want to get you on because I want to get the show out there. And not that many people already have, formed opinions on these incoming freshmen. So how much of that have you already done? And what's your process for the off season?
Yeah, I got an early jump on quite a few guys this year. Quarterback's easy to scout, or easier, I guess, than other positions. So I got to look at them kind of early and form some opinions. Running back, I followed up with, and, I've done a little bit into wide receiver, and tight ends are, they're a black box. But yeah. No, I got started on 24 prospects early. I just enjoy watching, seeing who's going to be next and trying to decode what a mystery between the ranks, and then who's actually good, and then where they're going to go, and decoding depth charts. And it's a fun process. But yeah, I got started pretty early this year.
Yeah, I mean, it is really fun, and I'm glad you got started early, because I'll be honest, even, I knew I had the show coming up, because I'm trying to plan out the off-season schedule. And I was even like, oh my God, I have to go on 247 and really start digging through some of these guys, because it's good that I did it recent because they're fresh in my mind. But, I think a lot of us haven't necessarily really done any deep dives. So before we get into the players, though, I got to say that you really are one of my favorite followers or follows on Twitter. I follow you. You don't just follow me, of course. But when you get into your pepper content, that's really one of the most unique things on Twitter. I love when you're posting some of your, I guess you're a gardener in your non football time, and you have multiple peppers, right? And I think you may do some other stuff. So share a little bit of that hobby with us, and then we'll get into the players.
Sure. Yeah. I got really into gardening, I guess, last season. I need something to do while I was locked inside for months.
Yes. And that's would you garden inside then, or is it in backyard, or?
Oh yeah. So I've already started my peppers. They're grown indoors. Oh. I got tomatoes, I got eggplants, I got the whole 9 yards. And it became a hobby of mine, and I was really attracted to peppers because there are like thousands of varieties, and they're all very interesting, and some are very hot, some are ornamental, and it's a very, very interesting field to be in, almost, because there's just so many varieties, and it's fun. I think I'm growing over 50 peppers this year. So it'll be an experience.
Wow, that is awesome. And I have to say, as I've gotten into hot sauces, I've really started to appreciate peppers and some of the subtle differences between, the peppers that are used for hot sauces and things like that. So I know that Bomac Big Time or whatever, I don't know if you follow him too, but he made his own hot sauce and kind of got associated with Scott Fishbowl last year, and it kind of took off. So maybe that's in your future too. Maybe some Chris Moxley hot pepper sauce.
Oh yeah.
That would be great. Well, we got some hot players to talk about. Incoming freshmen who can revitalize your devy teams, revitalize or really change the face of a campus to Canton team on the college side. And, I think it's really important to talk about these classes. And I tweeted this out the other day, but unless really the only format where it does not benefit to know classes even as deep as 2024, know them right now, and that is redraft, which is fine, but even regular dynasty, not even getting into devy, is still worthwhile knowing what is coming down the line, because trading away 2022 picks, 2023 picks, 2024 picks, and I always say this, you want to put faces to those picks. Right. So many times people ask, or they'll put a poll out there and they'll say, this player or a 2023 second, this player or a 2022 first. And I'm like, who is the player that you can get with that 2022 first? You need to have an idea of if these guys are going to be, if a class is fairly weak, a class is fairly strong. And so anyway, I've been saying it, unless you're in full blown redraft, it is worthwhile to listen to this podcast, but to know about the 2024 class, and so what we're going to do is, it's not a question of if these guys are good. I think they're all good. We're going to go over the top of their 247 rankings. So, all these guys are good, but the question is, especially in terms of devy and dynasty, is how good are they compared to other guys you're going to have the opportunity to pick this year in your devy or dynasty. Dynasty, you'd only, I guess, have rookies, but in your devy league. So when we're talking about these guys, try to put it in the context of, let's just say when we're talking running backs, where would this guy go between Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Zach Evans, because those are the kind of guys that some devy leagues may have available in the pool for drafting. And so where do you put a new freshman behind some of those guys? Obviously I think Bijan Robinson was in this position last year, and all of a sudden now he's maybe the 101. If he's not taken in a devy league, he's probably the 101. So, these guys can come onto the scene and they are immediately high value assets. But if you take them now before they've played a college snap, you can get some tremendous value. So I think, we are talking about guys who are 3 years away from contributing onto an NFL roster, but we're also talking about guys whose value can go from an afterthought to the 101 in one college season. So it's a pretty big deal. This is the best way you can find some value. What are your thoughts on that in terms of for someone who's listening to this and just throws it on there, but they're like, what do I need to know about the incoming freshman? How do you view a guy this far away from NFL?
Sure. So one of my my big pillars of dynasty has always been, don't undervalue future picks. People are always giddy to get the class that's happening this year. I think there's a couple issues with that. One is that that person could bust. A future pick is insulated in value, and that pick could be anywhere, right? So you might get you might have the 110 this year, but if you trade it for a future first, it could be the 103. That's a much higher outcome, right? So knowing who's going to be in that class is important. And the second part is, if you just know who's going to be available, then you're going to be a lot more cautious trading away your picks. You're going to say, hey, well, I know 2024 is going to have a whole bunch of high-end assets, and I don't want to move that. So being more knowledgeable about your future picks is a huge win. And it gives you a much better understanding of how to evaluate your dynasty roster. And to know if you're a contender now, but you go out and acquire 23 thirds or 23 first, 23 seconds, whatever you want to acquire, you can rebuild on the fly if you know that that class is going to be good. So knowing what it looks like in the future, I mean, that's a huge win.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely true, and I think it's a win and an edge because, like you said, I mean, people right now. Someone commented to me on Twitter just today and said, everyone's all over 2021 content right now, but nobody's talking about 2022, 2023, and now we're going to embark on 2024. Guys who've never played a college snap, but people, obviously, we know recency bias is a thing, and right now bias is, of course, a thing. And so everyone's so focused on 2021 rookies, and rightly so. It's a great class. But anyway, we're going to dive into guys who have yet to get on campus, probably even the early enrollees. I'm not sure on campus just yet. So it should be really fun. I have to say, we were talking pre-show, and this is something I used to do all the time with a good buddy of mine. Watch these high school tapes and just oogle over these guys who are just shredding high school defenses. And it's so easy to just think that every single guy on Rivals is an absolute monster because you're talking about high school highlights. I mean, everybody's got high school highlights that look awesome. So we're going to try to put a critiquing eye. I know you were on the Devy Debate podcast, and Felix dubbed you Cold Shower Chris Moxley, which was awesome. I actually was going to put it on my whiteboard here, but my dry erase marker, my kid left the top off, so it doesn't work. But I wanted to put Cold Shower Chris Moxley. So we may rain on some people's parades. We're definitely going to build up some of the good players, but we need to be critiquing and really try to find areas for improvement, or why a certain guy may not be the next stud, because it's very easy to sit here and say they're all the next stud, but they may not be. So without further ado, just for the format, what we're going to do is take the top 5 of quarterbacks and the top 5 running backs off of the 247 list. So, these are the highest rated by 247. Talk about them, talk about the comps that 247 has for them and whether or not it seems reasonable, which oftentimes it's kind of not. And then throw in some watch list guys who may not be in the top 5, but are going to depth charts where they could pop really quickly. So that's relevant to know, because if a guy comes on campus and starts playing really well, all of a sudden his value is huge, and you want to be holding that lotto ticket when he goes off. And then I think Chris has some that I missed, and he will interject, and we're going to just add names to the pool. So we want to give you as many names to follow along as possible. So I will say this, Chris, you are a data analyst. Before we get into the teams, I know I keep teasing it, but you're a data analyst. I'm a numbers guy too. I'm trying to learn more about film, what I need to watch, what matters to me in terms of what on the tape. And I've enjoyed that a lot. I definitely think both are very important for us. We don't have metrics for guys who haven't played in college yet, right? We don't have a breakout age. So you are a data analyst by trade, I think, even, and so you'd use that in your scouting and prospecting for college guys. But how do you do that here? What do you do for the high school guys that we don't have any numbers on?
Sure. So that's a good question. And I want to say it's blind faith, but it's a little more complicated, right? I think certain metrics are important, and especially when you evaluate them in the context of that player versus their peers. So does yards per carry matter? Not really. But if a player has a low yards per carry in high school versus his peers, maybe there's something to look out there. If that player has very low accuracy and completion percentage, maybe there's something to look out there, right? So we don't have these advanced metrics for high school players, but we can make some inferences. And this is where I really rely on a lot of film analysts that I trust and guys who spend a ton of their time looking at devy. And then I say, okay, well, you think this person looks good. Let me see what I see based on the metrics that we do have available to us. What's their yards per attempt look like? What's their completion percentage look like? And evaluate them at the end of the day and say, okay, well, where can we line up, and where can we really make those decisions and make some clear tiers, make some clear decisions about prospects, really try to hone in on film versus aligning what metrics we do have. It's tough, but it's a challenging but fun exercise.
Oh yeah, and it's really fun. And actually, I've been doing a lot of prospecting, obviously on, where this is the 2024, series of videos, but I did 2022 and 2023, and so my eye has been trained to watch college players for the last 4 weeks, really on film, so like very detail oriented there. And then watching these high school guys, I was looking at them differently though. I mean, yes, they all look fantastic because they're playing against 5'5", 160-pound linebackers and stuff. But I feel like I was a little more discerning than I was back as a freshman in my college years, watching Rivals tapes and just being like, oh, every guy is the next Heisman winner. So. Anyway, so yeah, without further ado, let's get into the players' names. I'm sure that's what all the listeners are like, let's go, let's go. They're fast forwarding. So number 1 quarterback in America, according to 247, is Caleb Williams. I know that he has his fans and he has his detractors. The book on him, I think 247 says the comp is Dak Prescott. I didn't see that at all. I think he's a much better and more shifty, twitchy runner than Dak Prescott is. Dak Prescott's more of the Tebow fullback. Caleb Williams is almost like Barry Sanders sometimes with some of the jukes that he'll do. I mean, he'll break guys down, like fully break guys down and get small in the hole and things like that. He looks like a legit running back sometimes. And then, the big knock that I've heard from multiple people is accuracy. Obviously, that's hard to tell in his highlights because they're all completions. But that's what I've heard, is accuracy is an issue. So he looks good to me athletically, but obviously I trust the people that say his accuracy is a concern. And I think you can get away with that certainly in college. I think on the college side, we can not be too worried about it. And the Lincoln Riley system, I think he's going to crush at Oklahoma. But, what do you think? And does that accuracy, make us concerned for not next level, but next level in the NFL?
Yeah, I think that's a good description, right? Is Dak a good comp? Not really. I've also seen Russell Wilson. I think that's a worse comp.
Yeah.
He's not very accurate. I mean, 55% completion percentage in 1920, and then he had 52% completion percentage the year before. I mean, he's not an accurate quarterback. He's not really. I don't want to say he's not a quarterback because he can throw the ball, but I mean, he has a lot to do to get up to collegiate standards, and then that's a step away from the NFL. But he does have positives, right? He's the best playmaker in this class. He's the best arm strength in this class. He can throw on the move, not accurately, but he can do so. He is a phenomenal playmaker, right? He is awesome with his legs. There's a reason he's ranked number 1, and that's why. A lot of people are projecting him to be to improve accuracy, to improve his ability as a quarterback. I don't know if accuracy is something we can improve on. There's a lot of people that talk about that. I don't see it. I mean, Josh Allen did it once, but it's not something that is innately something a quarterback can improve on. It's very instinctual, and it's something that, either you have it or you don't. And I'm not sure he has it. I mean, I don't have him in my top 5. I have a lot of concerns about him at the next level. I think he's probably a great C2C asset. I mean, he can run the ball. There's no question about it. I don't know if he has NFL upside to be a first-round pick. I think he has to do a lot of work. And Lincoln Riley's probably the guy that can make it happen, but there's a lot of concern. His mechanics are concerning as well. I mean, he's a lot of work to do, but OU is the best place to do it. So
yeah,
maybe.
Yeah, super high upside. I think what I said is I think what I said here in my little notes are, I feel like his floor is Tim Tebow with a quick release and better rushing. So, I mean, but that level of accuracy and that level of maybe, quarterback arm talent, but better rusher. So, I mean, in college, that's going to play. If he really gets the arm going, his ceiling is a bigger Kyler with not quite the same arm, because he's got that level of just jitterbug rushing ability. I mean, he really looks like a running back, at times. So that's a pretty big gap. Floor of Tebow, ceiling of Kyler Murray. But that, like what you described, though, it sounds like he is a very volatile prospect. If he doesn't really improve, he's going to be a good runner, and that's going to get you fantasy points in college, and he's going to be an afterthought in the NFL. If he tightens up that arm, we could have the ceiling of anybody you want to imagine. So, yeah, I mean, he does throw these rainbow balls sometimes, 50 yards downfield, just like total rainmakers way up in the air that just drop in the bucket. So certainly makes aggressive throws. And like you said, on the run, falling to his wrong side, chucking it to the sideline, things like that. So he's an aggressive player, and you got to like that. We'll see if he can tighten it up under the tutelage of Lincoln Riley. But yeah, I mean, you're not the first one to say not even in your top 5. So I think that's pretty interesting because he's so highly rated on 247. Next is Sam Heward. He's out of Washington, the state of, I believe, going to Washington as well as so many of his family members before him. I know his dad was Damon, and his uncle, I think, is Brock Heward. His dad's Damon Heward. So, and then there's like another uncle and a grandfather. I mean, they're just like a football family forever. So, he's got the IQ, I suppose. What I saw, I didn't really love what I saw, to be honest. I mean, at least for fantasy wise, complete 0 on the ground. One of these traditional pocket passers, kind of a loopy deep ball. I thought his passes hung a little bit. I mean, not a lot of zip. Placement was really good. Drop it, in a garbage can from 50 yards out. And then I saw his tape just had a lot of deep balls. Like they just ran deep shots and he just put it there. But I didn't see a ton of like what I would consider like NFL throws or even college throws of like outs and, just really good pinpoint stuff, more just like chuck it deep and it landed. What do you think of Sam Heward?
So I think I'm higher on him than you are. He's my QB1. I think he can complete a pass from anywhere. I think he has some concerns, and I think you talked about them, right? He's a 0 in the run game. He's not very mobile. I think he can move around the pocket and do that efficiently. And, I think his ability to process the game and make throws is going to make up for his immobility, but it's a concern, right? I mean, he's immobile.
At least for fantasy, it's a concern. I mean, I think you can
Absolutely.
be a pretty successful quarterback, but just from the fantasy lens.
Oh yeah. It's a concern. 100%. He will not give you rushing production, but his accuracy is excellent. He is to me, the best deep ball in the class. I think he has a combination of accuracy on the deep ball and a great arm strength that allows him to do so. And like you mentioned earlier, right? He has NFL bloodlines. His uncle, his dad, he knows what it takes to be a quarterback in the league, and he has physical traits to do so. I think he has a skill set that will allow him to succeed in college, and I think that he can succeed short, intermediate, and deep. I think his accuracy is phenomenal. He is a tier above, I think, the next couple quarterbacks as my QB1. I just think he can make any throw he wants pretty much whenever. I think the one knock besides mobility is that he's kind of small. I mean, he's 6'2", 190, but I think he can put on a little bit of size and add that weight. But I'm a huge fan of Heward. I mean, I think he's just phenomenal. I think he can make all the throws, but yeah, from a fantasy perspective, there are concerns there.
All right, ringing endorsement from Chris Moxley. Yeah, they'll get him into the cafeteria on those late night pancake runs, I think, and he'll put on 20 pounds in college at least, I think. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. He really can. I was being a little critical. I mean, yeah, I just thought the deep ball accuracy was pretty pinpoint. It looked a little loopy to me, but maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But obviously, yeah, clearly NFL arm, because I think, it makes sense genetically. He's got that arm that has been successful in college and the NFL for generations now. But certainly I think if nothing else, we can probably say he's a high floor prospect.
Absolutely.
And I think that's worth something. And probably a high floor. I mean, worst case, he's probably a day 2 NFL pick unless he gets like catastrophic injury or something like that. So, like at worst, I think he's Jacob Eason or something like that. All right, next on the list, and I heard that you're going to trash this, is Brock Vandegrift. Sorry to spoil it. I'll tell you what I saw. So, he's going to be going to Georgia, I think, unless he backs out. He might already be signed. I'm sure he's actually already signed, but he's from a small town in Georgia. I think what I had, my notes are, he's got a high effort arm action. I mean, it looks like he's really just gearing up to rifle a ball every time he throws it. So sometimes I think that could mean it's a little of a long arm action, but I called it high effort. I mean, it just looks like he's throwing a fastball every single time. I do think he makes pretty quick decisions. He was doing a lot of read options and he would pull it out and still be able to get it, over the middle of some short slants and things like that. So I like that for just kind of, it takes a lot of coordination to do the handoff, pull it, and throw all at once, which I kind of like to see. He did have a high completion rate of 70%, I think, in his junior and senior years, which you've been mentioning. That's nice to see. I thought he had pretty good zip when needed. He could really rifle it in there, but I'm not sure he has multiple throws in his bag. I know he's got one, and it's a fastball. And then I think he's athletic enough to contribute as a runner. I don't think he's, Caleb Williams, but he's athletic enough. I think he can be not a zero and probably even run some RPO stuff and some read option for the Dogs, but they're not going to run any read option because they just I don't know what they're doing at Georgia. They're getting all these players and they just want to run 1925 football. So
I like, okay. So I feel like I was set up to fail here. I don't dislike him a ton. I just don't have him in tier 1 or tier 2. He is fine, I guess. I think he does a lot of things well. Like, I really do. I think he's a very well-rounded player. I think he's really good on throws, short and intermediate. His high completion percentage you talked about, right? 70%. That's great. Our friend Felix has him as QB1. So I respect that opinion as well. And so I want to like him, I think, more than I do. I've seen him comp to Jarrett Stidham. I think that's a bad comp. Felix said he saw a little bit of Zach Wilson in his game. I see that as well. I've seen Bo Nix, and I kind of like the Bo Nix comp, and I feel like that's maybe a little harsh on him. But I can see the similarities in their game. Like, he is good off platform, right? He's good scrambling. He's very athletic. He's listed as a dual threat quarterback, so you know that he has that athleticism to do so. I think the concerns that I have are, one, his competition's okay. It's not amazing, so I think we're judging him maybe on a weird scale. His mechanics are also weird, and I think you talked about it, right? He looks like he's chucking it every time, but he really the same issue that you had with Heward is that, what's his velocity look like? I don't see that with Vandegrift at all. I see arm strength that's good, but I don't see that velocity when he throws it deep. The big pro is he's got a great arm, but I don't see velocity. I don't see that high zip at the end of his throws. I think he struggles with that. And I don't know if that's a mechanics issue, or I don't know if that's maybe he doesn't have the arm strength, because I think he can complete the throws. I just don't know if he can do it with the velocity that he needs to. But I like him. I mean, he's currently my QB4. He's just outside of the top 2 tiers. But he's a good quarterback. He's a solid all-around player. I think he's going to be a great backup in the NFL. How about that?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, not every guy in the top 5 is going to be an NFL stud. I mean, that's, if we get one really good NFL player out of this top 5, we're probably, batting pretty well. So, yeah, I agree with you. The zip was on, he can throw a nice, like, straight line. I actually didn't see that many deep throws in the film that I watched. Like, I don't even know if they threw that many deep passes. I will say, yeah, like the Zach Wilson idea. I mean, he's certainly, and even the Bo Nix. I mean, he plays hard. He plays full throttle all the time. I don't think Bo Nix has ever seen 70% completion in his whole life. So, that might be, that's the only thing I would disagree with you on in terms of the comp, but I think I can see it. Just kind of that gritty guy who's going to give you 110% on every play. He seems like that kind of dude. And then, all right. So, yeah, we are going to go really long here. I love talking about all these guys. So the next in the top, I think the top 5, I'll let you talk maybe a little more. So, but what I'll say about JJ McCarthy, you mentioned Zach Wilson. I saw a little Zach Wilson and JJ McCarthy. That's what I, kind of running around. I did think he had kind of a quick release. I liked that. I thought he was an aggressive player. His film, I would describe Zach Wilson as fun. I think JJ McCarthy looks fun. He just looks like a guy who's going to run around and make some plays. And I liked that. Pretty good zip. And he's going to be going to Michigan where QBs die. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I might have a different opinion on him if he was going to Michigan. He's an interesting player for me. I see him ranked highly, and then I see him ranked a little bit lower sometimes. I think his arm is good, but not spectacular. I think he is, great intermediate. I think he's great short. I think he's great accuracy on both those throws. He doesn't really throw the deep ball. And not only does he not throw it, I don't think he throws it very well. I have questions about how good is his arm on deep passes. Is his accuracy good enough to match up with it? I don't know. Because he has good accuracy. He hit 70%. So I'm like, well, he can throw accurate passes, but is he good enough to really hit players in stride, beyond 20 yards? That's the concern that I have. I think he's athletic. I think that's Zach Wilson. I see a little bit of what you're saying. He's not a runner, but he has the athleticism to escape the pocket and move around in the pocket and make those throws. But he's also really he was at IMG, so he played against good competition, and posting the stats that he did, that was impressive. He the 24/7 comp for him is Kyle Allen. I feel like that's shooting kind of low. I saw him also comp to Tanner Morgan. I feel like he's like a rich man's Tanner Morgan if we're doing that. But I see a lot of that in his game as well. I think he's better than that. I think he could be the future at Michigan, but the future at Michigan might be like the past at Alabama. So I don't know what that really means in terms of upside. But if he hits, he could really be a very good quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's got a nice upside worth taking a gamble on for sure. If things come together and, maybe he adds some arm strength and things like that, with some coaching and some strength and conditioning and all that kind of thing. So he's fun. I just keep coming back to that comp. When I was watching his tape, I think it was actually some of the most entertaining to watch of all the guys I looked at. And then we come to a guy who wasn't that entertaining, Kyle McCord, who's going to go to Ohio State. And I don't really have that much on him. Maybe I was starting to get fatigue watching so much film, but I just basically have traditional pocket passer. He does have easy arm strength. Conversely to like Vandergriff, we said, and you mentioned this, but he can get zip and get strength into the throw, but it doesn't look easy. Whereas Kyle McCord kind of just, he's back there just whipping it, and it's pretty easy. But other than that, he's like Sam Heward, but not as good.
Yeah, I think he's got a great arm. That's a huge plus, right, for him. So he's fairly accurate too. I think he's posted 64% accuracy last year. So that's a plus. He's not mobile though. But yeah, he can get around in the pocket enough. His level of competition is somewhat suspect. And then there's the overarching question of, is he ever going to play at Ohio State? I don't know. He could. He could compete for the job this year and potentially beat out Stroud, could potentially beat out Miller. I guess he could. But he's also got the exemption to go 1 year. So even if he doesn't end up at Ohio State, could he go somewhere else and start? That's another consideration to really think about. I think he's a good player. The comp is Matt Stafford. That's aggressive. I think he has a similar arm and a similar build. I mean, he's already built. He's big for being an incoming freshman. I think he's 6'3", 215.
Mm-hmm.
But he definitely has the arm to succeed. I don't know how it's going to fare against better competition. I just have a couple questions about his game. He's not somebody I'm super in on, but he could surprise, I think.
Yeah, and anyone with a huge arm in the right system could certainly put up some big numbers and put themselves on the map. I've got 3 guys who are not in the top 5 that I think are going to schools where they can get the opportunity to pop pretty quickly and pretty early. Plus, their film looks interesting. I'm going to go through them, actually, all 3 real quick. You then get your counterpoint, and I think you might have someone to throw into the mix as well. But first, a guy I came across simply because he was going to Baylor, and Corey Brewer, or is it Corey Brewer? No. Charlie Brewer. Corey Brewer is somebody else, a Florida basketball player, I think. No, Charlie Brewer transferred to Utah. So I think Baylor has no incumbent at the quarterback position. So I was interested to see this guy, Kyran Jones, dual threat. And so I popped on his film. And the first play is a 45-yard in the air running to this opposite hand, completion down the field. And I was like, oh, I sat up in my chair and I was like, what is this? I think he has a pretty quick release. I was interested to see multiple types of throws. I could see him really bear down and throw a liner. I saw him throw some stuff with some touch. I think in terms of his dual threat nature, he's more quick, shifty, rather than, long speed. He had a couple breakaways that just didn't impress me. But in the short and intermediate areas of the field, he was weaving in around traffic sometimes. Certainly interesting. I mean, you love any quarterback that can get stuff with his legs, like we've already talked about. I think he's got a shot to play quickly, maybe even right away at Baylor. So he was interesting. And then Preston Stone is going to Southern Methodist. That's G5, unfortunately for him, even though he's a pretty high recruit. I don't love going to G5, but he's super fun. Another guy who's just running around, very athletic. I think timed at a 4.5 at some point. I will say he threw some ill-advised throws. I mean, this is a guy who's really kind of going for the grand slam every single play, off his back foot, falling backwards, throwing, just chucking up into the air and getting away with it. But, at the college level, that's probably not going to happen. Good arm strength, a little of a big wind up at times, and that's one thing I really look for, because that's competition independent is your arm action. And so for a quarterback, I think that's something we can evaluate regardless of who they're throwing against or who they're throwing to. And then Tyler Buckner for Notre Dame, who's going there. And obviously Ian Book's gone. I really like Buckner, actually. He's kind of down the list, but he just oozes like in control playmaking ability, which is what I'll kind of just say. Like he just looks like he's not running around crazy. He's commanding the plays, and he's making things happen, and he's good runner. I mean, he's not Lamar Jackson, but he's a good runner. I think he improvises pretty well. Good arm strength. I'm not sure it's great arm strength, but the throws are pretty quick, and I really like that. I like the quick release. That's one of my favorite things when the quarterback looks more like a shortstop turning two rather than a pitcher throwing a fastball. So, and I like to see that. So Tyler Buckner is another one of mine, and he can pop pretty quick because I think he could start immediately at Notre Dame. I mean, they don't really have anybody. So those are my 3 non-high ranked guys that I'm keeping an eye on, and I'll throw it to you to comment on them or add someone of your own.
So I'll speak quickly to each of them. Kyran Jones is interesting. He's got a really good arm. He's a good runner, but he also posted a sub 50% completion percentage last season.
Oh, I don't think I caught that.
And then I think maybe the year before he posted 58%. He's not an accurate passer. He needs a lot of work. He's very raw, but C2C, I think he has a lot of rushing upside. So Long term, maybe it's a question mark, but I think immediately he could be somebody who pops for your C2C teams. Preston Stone is interesting. I saw him come to Johnny Manziel, and I was like, well, I don't know about that. And then I was like, well, that kind of makes sense. They kind of play a similar game. He had a very good completion percentage. I think it was up 75%. He's great short intermediate throws. He posted gigantic numbers in Texas, and that's always like, maybe. But I think what you said, right? His decision making is suspect. Even though he had very good completion percentage, I felt like he was like dinking and dunking a lot. He was under 20 yards. I mean, he was taking gimmies. His arm strength is also not very good. I have a lot of questions about that. And his competition is suspect as well. I think he probably could have played against better competition. I wish he did. I don't know what to think of him. He's a guy that could pop, and then we look back in 2 years and say, why don't we think about Preston Stone? Look how good his college or his high school stats were. But I have a lot of questions about his game. Buckner, he's a guy I love a lot. I'm a huge fan of him. He's in my tier 2 of quarterbacks. He had gigantic numbers, and truly gigantic numbers against very good competition. Super well-rounded playmaker. He can do a lot of different things. He's smart. He knows when to stay in the pocket. He knows when to escape the pocket. He's got a great arm. I think you mentioned he can make off-platform throws. He could be running and just chuck it downfield. Something else is that he's enrolled already, so he could win the job if he's already on campus and getting used to the system and talking to coaches and really understanding what the Notre Dame game is all about. And plus, they had Ian Book, so it's not that different of a system if he's going to try to run it that way. Very interesting comparison between the two. I have a little bit concerns about. He's not super accurate. His mechanics need some work, especially his footwork. He's also a very boom bust, interesting prospect, right? So he had an injury his sophomore year. He was very dominant as a junior, and then he was awful in the Elite 11. I don't know what to make of him. I really like him, so I have him in my top 3. But I understand that he is a very high risk prospect, and that he could just fall off the face of the earth and just never start a game in college potentially. So one guy I want to add to your list, though, is Drake May. Drake May is from my neck of the woods down in North Carolina. I think he is potentially the most accurate quarterback in the class. He doesn't throw any picks. I think he has 2, maybe in his high school career. He had a 72% percentage this year, 65% last year. He is a very good athlete. He is an awesome basketball player. His athleticism translates to football some. He's not a great runner, but he's definitely mobile. I think he had 300 yards and maybe 6 touchdowns, but I don't think that maybe tells his whole rushing story. I don't think he's that good on the ground, but he is definitely mobile enough. I have a couple questions about his game as well. He's not very aggressive. He doesn't make anticipatory throws. He doesn't really like to throw downfield very much, but he is somebody who I think could go into North Carolina, learn behind Sam Howell, learn from Mac Brown, learn that system, and come out as a very accurate, very aggressive player who's already 6'5", already has the requisite size. All of his family members are 6'7", so he could grow another 2 inches. He's a guy, he's my 3rd-ranked quarterback currently, and I think he's somebody who could continue to rise and just be an all-around stud for us for the next few years, both at a college level and then making a jump to the pros. He has what it takes to be a pro quarterback.
Very nice. Yeah, I think I've actually heard some people talking about him. So he's got like basketball bloodlines or something. He's got athleticism in his family. They're not just tall. I think they're someone. I think one of either his dad or his uncle or someone was a D1 college basketball player. Maybe I don't know if it's for UNC or another D1 team, but I think I heard that. So. Yeah, he's certainly highly ranked. He just didn't make it into the top 5. I think we were talking before, like I just went off the composite, just top 5. And I think he's like 6th. So he's like just missed the cut there, but I'm glad you brought him up. I have to say I'm a little disappointed to hear that because I am a bit of a Jacoby, what is his name? Jacoby Criswell, I think, fan, who's the current, basically the freshman now, and I think he's kind of the second string. So I was impressed that he rose to be second string so quickly. But, he's a dual threat guy and he's just interesting to me. But, maybe May comes in and just usurps that title right away. Certainly seems to have high upside there. So if May's 3 for you, and I know Heward is 1, does that mean Buckner's 2?
Yeah, he is. I think he has, and that is factoring in his floor. So if he hits at his ceiling, he I think is quarterback 1. He has the upside to do so. I think he's a fantastic upside play, understanding that there is a lot of risk to his profile.
Sure. Yeah, well, no risk it, no biscuit. But yeah, I really liked Buckner. Actually, he was one of the very first guys in this class I got my eyes on because I'm in the program C2C League with some of our, I think, guys we're interacting with a lot on Twitter, Devy Dietz, Austin, and some other people. And the way that is set up is basically recruiting. So you don't draft incoming freshmen. You actually are recruiting through the year. And they've got this, I don't have to deal with it, thankfully, but it's this incredibly complicated point system. I mean, it's basically like the video game come to life where, each week you're putting in points and you have to keep track of it on a spreadsheet and all this stuff. But you get extra points and things like that based on your region where you're located. And my team is in California, and he's from California. And you pick to run a certain system, and you get bonus points for positions based on the system you run. So I said I wanted a quarterback-friendly system, and so I thought I was going to get him because I was in California, get bonus points there. I had a quarterback-friendly system, and so I was like, I'm going to make my team quarterback centric because it's 2 QB and super flex on the NFL side. So I want to feed those quarterbacks. And I didn't get him, which was a bummer. I somehow actually, because you do recruiting and then it's all this stuff with your points. And then you go basically head to head against somebody else who's got almost as many points on the guy. And then it ends up being just a lottery. There's this randomizer that Matt Bruning does. So in the randomizer, I lost Buckner, which was a bummer because I did kind of fall in love with him after I was I kind of pinpointed him as this is my most likely quarterback that I'm going to get based on being in California and things like that. But then I was I just really started to like him a lot too. And I lost him. And actually in an upset, I won Caleb Williams somehow. So Caleb Williams is coming to my school. Even though I was a major upset. I mean, I shouldn't have gotten him, but because of the randomizer, he popped on my team. And now I kind of wish I would have gotten Buckner and not Williams. And when I got Williams, I hadn't really looked too hard into the videos and stuff. And I was oh, it's the number 1 quarterback. That's awesome. But now I'm I do kind of wish I had stuck with my original opinion on wanting to get Buckner. I mean, I still tried. It just didn't land for me. Anyway, so that's an interesting story because I really liked him. I know you're high on him. I'm pretty sure Austin is very high on him as well. And so these are some smart people that really like him. And so I'm excited to see him on the field next year. So that does it for quarterbacks. And let's go into running backs. I think I'm going to actually split this up into 2. So I'll edit this part out here, but if you're good to go for however long, we'll just keep talking and I'll just split it into 2 episodes.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm happy to talk as long as you are.
Okay, super. I have the time tonight anyway, so I might as well just record 2 episodes and
sure.
We'll release them on separate days. But so I'm going to end that one and then we'll go into running backs and I'll probably have to start over again.
Sounds good.
So that wraps up quarterbacks. And Chris, I really appreciate you being on. I think we'll bring you back for running backs, and we'll have a kind of a two-parter with you on the next class. But we're kind of hitting time here, so I think I'm going to divide it up. And but yeah, so I think Chris Moxley is smarter than me. His top quarterbacks are Heward, then Buckner. And then the guy I didn't even put on my list, Drake May, I think it is. So those are his top 2 tiers. I think, is there a tier break after May?
Yeah, there is.
I think before Vandegrift. And I think I really liked McCarthy on the tape I saw. I think Heward, I agree, high floor. So I would probably have him in tier 1. Maybe with, I don't know if I'm going to be so discerning with my tiers. So I think I would say, I think I enjoyed McCarthy the most, just watching him. Buckner a lot. I like a lot. And I think Heward for the high floor. So that would be my top 3 probably. And then, Vandegrift is, I think, kind of a high floor, but risky in there as well. But I think he's going to be a pretty decent college player. And then, Caleb Williams got to be in there somewhere, but he's just high risk. He's high risk and you're hoping. It's weird that he's ranked number 1 because you're hoping for all this advancement. He probably shouldn't be number 1. I mean, at least on 247, I guess they're just only going on upside. But so I think, also suffice to say, after going through all these quarterbacks and we're talking about them in this way, the 2024 class is not that star-studded. We like Heward as a high floor guy more than a high ceiling, at least for fantasy purposes. And then everybody else, even, Buckner is high risk, but you love the reward. Caleb Williams, high risk, also nice reward. But we're not listing 3 or 4 guys that we feel confident, are going to be high NFL picks. And I think that's different from the year before. We had Bryce Young and DJU. Both were pretty locked and loaded, I think, to be, even from high school, we're like, these guys are going to be, 1 and 2 in the NFL. Kind of like before them, it was Fields and Lawrence. It seems like not the greatest QB class.
No, so there's no DJU, there's no Bryce Young. There's not. It's not elite upside like you were saying. I do think it has very good depth. I think the depth of this class is much better than the last couple of years. I think we have maybe 8 guys that can really make a case for themselves and be NFL quarterbacks, but there's not a high upside guy that I think will step in and be an elite producer right away that we're going to see from Young or DJU. It's a solid class. It's not an high upside class. I think it's a great
fair enough. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. So that is important, though. Let's put that in the context of your devy leagues and your dynasty leagues. The 2024, if you're hoping for quarterbacks, and most of these leagues now are 2 QB or at least super flex, at least at this point, I wouldn't be banking on a 2024 first round pick being a lock and load quarterback stud. I'm sure by the time it all comes out, some quarterback will be taken in the top 10 because I feel like that happens whether they should be taken or not. Some NFL team is going to need a quarterback. But when you're thinking about if you're trading 2024 picks or you're looking this far out in the future, I'm not sure this is a class you want to really say, I'll get my quarterback in 2024. Of course, things can change. I think quarterback is the biggest thing where when the lights come on, guys can just look different than we think. It's such a mind game. It's such a, how do you control your offense? I think, how do you rally the troops kind of to get all like coach speaky or whatever. But I do think quarterback is one where the physical tools can be overridden by just being good at managing your team, managing plays, and eliminating mistakes. So anyway, well, we'll have to see what happens when the lights come on next year. But great conversation, and we will run it back with running backs next time. And for everyone here at WWTS, we'll see y'all next time.